Welcome back, guys. Or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and today I have a fun side-by-side comparison of two of the best-selling cars that you can currently buy. On the left, we have the Toyota Corolla. This one specifically is an LE trim level in Celestite paint. It's literally the cheapest Toyota that you can currently buy with an MSRP of about $24,000. And on the right, we have the Camry. This one is an SE in ice cap. It looks really nice in person, and it is the cheapest Camry that I was able to find today. So after the Edmark Toyota discount, today I want to find out if the Toyota Camry is worth about $10,000 more than the Corolla, or if you should leave it at the lot, check out the Corolla, or check out the other competition altogether. So if you guys get anything out of this side-by-side comparison review, where we cover everything from the front to the back, to all the little bits in between, please consider liking it. Comment your thoughts, opinions, and questions down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, huge thanks to Edmark Toyota for letting me borrow their cars for the day. I'll link them below if you're interested. If you want a huge discount even below what you see on the screen, call Matt. He's the general sales manager. Reference Automotive Anonymous. Additionally, huge thanks to Lasfit for sponsoring today's video. More on them in a few minutes. Let's dive right in with this side-by-side comparison. But before we get too far into this video, I do want to mention a few of the similarities and the differences between these two models, because your Camry or your Corolla could look entirely different to these. First of all, the Corolla is assembled in Japan, the Camry is assembled in the United States. The Corolla is a compact car, the Camry is a mid-sized car, so it's a few inches taller, wider, and longer. It has a little bit more spacious back seat, as you'll see soon enough, and it comes only as a hybrid option with a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine that comes from the RAV4. It's actually pretty powerful with about 60 to 70 more horsepower than what you see in the typical Corolla. But the Corolla can be offered with the hybrid. Although the hybrid makes less horsepower than this naturally aspirated 2-liter, you can also have it in a hatchback, and even the GR hatchback, which makes over 300 horsepower through a turbocharged 3-cylinder. But both of these cars are honestly great options. They come with Toyota Safety Sense 3.0, which is a great safety system. It really keeps you centered in your lane with the lane keep assist. It has bright LED headlights, adaptive cruise, blind spot monitoring. You really can't go wrong either way, and you're going to find those features even on this basic, essentially $22,000 Corolla. So while it doesn't have a lot of the upscale features that you'll find on this Camry, which does cost about $10,000 more, I do want to show you guys exactly what it's like to compare the sedan models one against the other, but also what does $10,000 get you? Sure, you might get 60 to 70 more horsepower depending on if your Camry is front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, but you're going to have a little bit nicer interior, a few more creature comforts. But at the end of the day, is that necessary? Is that worth it? Is the extra 2 cubic feet of cargo area in the back going to be the deal breaker? We're going to find out, so let's get right into it. Under the hood, both of these vehicles have a CVT for the transmission, but this non-hybrid Corolla comes with a traditional CVT. Meanwhile, the Camry comes with an eCVT, which currently seems to be about as reliable as any transmission currently offered. With a planetary gear set, it's not as complicated as the typical automatic or CVT transmission, and that's a big win for the Camry. But this 2-liter engine, it makes 169 horsepower. It's actually pretty decently powerful for this 3,200-pound vehicle. I just did about an 8.5 seconds 0 to 60 on it, compared to the Camrys, which are usually about a second faster. It does take an extra 50 to 60 horsepower to do that, because these are either 225 horsepower if it's front-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive like this one. It has 232 horsepower. Although the all-wheel drive system on the Camry is not a mechanical drive shaft, it's a little bit more reactionary and less of a torque vectoring preventative all-wheel drive system for losing traction, because there's just a 50 horsepower electric motor in the back that kicks in once it's necessary. Otherwise, under the hood, you have the reservoirs, the fuse box, the air filter, everything on the periphery, and it's fairly tight on the Camry because you do have the inverter converter over here, the intake manifold on the front, the exhaust manifold on the back. But because the Corolla's body is a little bit smaller, this smaller 2-liter engine, maybe it's actually a little bit more spacious without the hybrid components, but I think it would be pretty easy to work on either of these. And honestly, they're Toyotas. They have a timing chain, they have direct and port injection. There's not going to be a lot of maintenance that's needed beyond the typical service intervals. So I think either of these options is pretty good. But the Camry is about a second faster 0 to 60, and you can feel the immediacy from the hybrid system as well as the larger displacement motor under acceleration. I want to give a huge shout out to Lasfit for sponsoring today's video and producing some of the best aftermarket LED turn signals in the business. This is our 2025 Subaru Forester. We absolutely love it, but like a lot of the modern vehicles that I review, it's actually missing something from the factory. This thing came with a halogen incandescent turn signal, which is kind of strange because the rest of the headlight housing has an LED daytime running light and a projector headlight. So the halogen from the factory wasn't that bright. Drivers at night couldn't see it as well, and it just didn't match the aesthetic of the rest of the vehicle. But with the Lasfit T3 switchback amber and white light, this thing looks absolutely fantastic. It's a lot brighter at night, it looks a lot better during the day, and now this feels like a much more modern vehicle. Additionally, they're pretty affordable. They're also very easy to swap out. This Forester, I switched them out in about 30 seconds. I didn't even need any hand tools. It's safe and it's easy to do, and what's better than that and a low price? Additionally, I also swapped out the puddle lights on the driver and passenger front doors, which made a huge difference for approaching the vehicle, especially at night. It took about 10 seconds to pop that out, switch out the bulb, and now I have a much brighter approach, and I absolutely love it. So thank you so much, Lasfit, for sponsoring today's video, and I'll link their description down below. You get 20% off with code AA20, and that's pretty cool. I think the rear end on both of these sedans look really nice. The Corolla, you can definitely tell, is a little bit more narrow, a little bit more curvy, and it really has all the typical classic Corolla lines. It's probably going to continue to age really well, as these always have, but you can definitely tell it's a slightly smaller, more curvy, more approachable sedan than the Camry, which is a little bit more angular and aggressive looking. It honestly just looks like a Lexus these days, in my opinion. Is this going to age as well in 15 or 20 years? I don't know, but right now it looks really cool and I like it a lot. This has a button to pop open the trunk, something you would expect to find on all modern vehicles, yet this LE Corolla doesn't have that. So this is a 15.1 cubic feet trunk. It's huge, it's insulated really well, carpet everywhere, and there's even a temporary spare tire with the tire changing tools and the scissor jack underneath the floor. But on the Corolla, you have to use the key or you have to push the button that is inside the driver's footwell. And then you have 13.1 cubic feet, so you're only down 2. Again, very wide opening mouth. It's insulated, there's carpet on the trunk lid, and there's a temporary spare tire underneath the floor. The seats lay down in both of these vehicles, and honestly, for how much bigger and more expensive the Camry is, the Corolla is really not missing too much with the trunk area. Both of these cars have very bright headlights, and they are actually rated good by the IIHS. Part of the reason these are both top safety picks, but there's going to be a lot of discrepancies between the trim levels, so we're not going to get too far into the nitty-gritties. Overall, Toyota Safety Sense 3.0 works pretty similar on these vehicles, and the way that we have them today. The Corolla has a hubcap on a steely 16-inch wheel. The Camry has a very nice, shiny black 19-inch wheel. No black plastic cladding or anything like that. Everything is paint matched, even the side skirts down below, and they have a very nice side profile. It does look like the roofline on the Camry is just a little bit bigger, but the windows on the Camry don't actually look that much bigger. Honestly, both of these vehicles have great visibility, especially from the driver position and how you fit inside of the vehicle. So with that said, let's come over here to the Corolla, and we'll hop into the back seat, and then we'll do the same with the Camry, then the front seats, and then we'll wrap up this video. The back doors on the Corolla are actually pretty decent. I really can't knock the window visibility because that's a lot of glass. The frame for the window is actually pretty thin, and then the materials are exactly what you expect, or better than what you'd expect for about $22,000. You even have cloth on the armrest. It's not just cheap plastic. So you'll actually notice up front that the door cards are basically the same as these. But like a lot of Toyotas, the back door doesn't open that wide. So you do have to be careful trying to get in here that you don't hit yourself or knock your head on the roof of the vehicle because it's just not that big of an entryway. Could you get a child safety seat in here? Yeah, probably, but it's going to be a lot easier on the Camry. So ducking my head, crouching down, at 5'11", I can have a lot of room, but I actually have this seat further forward than I would personally want to be in it. There's not a ton of legroom up there, and if we move the seat back, there won't be a ton of legroom back here. Roof line of the vehicle is okay, unless I slouch with bad posture, which would be really bad for my back. I don't have a ton of headroom. I could drive maybe, or ride, say 50 to 100 miles back here, but I'm not going to want to go across the country, and probably 100 miles would be quite a stretch. But you have an armrest, good visibility, and overall it's a light interior, so even though it's not huge and spacious and there's not a lot of glass above your head, it's actually pretty airy in here, and I think the lighter colors really help with that. The back seats on the Camry are going to be a little bit more spacious, and although the door still doesn't open as far as I would like it to, it does seem to open a little bit bigger than on the Corolla. Visibility is about the same, but the door card materials for an extra $10,000 are pretty evident even on the back door panels. Materials are nicer, they are still very plasticky, rubbery, but they feel okay. And then a much bigger entryway. So at 5'11", hopping into the back of this, I didn't almost hit my head like I did coming out of the Corolla off camera. I have a map pocket. I actually have ventilation and plugins back here. I have an armrest, and honestly, even with this driver position, more like in my actual position, I have as much room as you guys saw on the Corolla when the driver position was doable but not comfortable. So this is a much more spacious back area, but because of the black roof line, it doesn't necessarily feel that more spacious, but objectively, it hands down is I would much rather be back here for a road trip than in the Corolla. But the front of the Corolla has everything that you need and nothing that you don't. Basically the same door card materials. Good size for the visibility, blind spot monitoring, cloth seats. It's a pretty low seat and it's not too far into the vehicle, so for most people you can just kind of drop down. It's not too much of a workout to get into here. Just be careful you don't hit your head on the 4.5-foot tall roof. But sitting in here, zooming out, and actually I do need to slide back from what you guys just saw. It's pretty nice. You have two screens. This screen is smaller. It has more black plastic than the one in the Camry, but it's literally the same software. You're not missing out on anything. You still have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and then you get everything that you need on here, even all the lane keep assist features. You can modify and adjust all these things to your heart's content, so that's pretty cool. You have a traction control button, basically the only button you need in a car like this. And then you have reverse. This one actually does not have auto start stop, which is a really appreciated feature for the LE Camry. A little bit of an armrest, a couple plugins down there. Not too much to talk about up top though. It does have the extension piece right here, and then no light on the vanity. But overall, for $22,000 or so, I can't complain. This is an awesome space. But as we hop into the Camry, you'll expect to see a little bit nicer entryway and interior. Not only does this have a more powerful hybrid 2.5-liter motor, not only does it have more cargo capacity and space in the back seats, but let's see what it has to offer up front. So far, visibility is pretty similar. Nicer door card materials, but basically the same thing you saw in the back. A little bit nicer entryway, although you're not paying enough to get Camry stamped into the door sill. At least there is a black door sill. And then these seats, they're actually pretty comfortable. I like them a lot. Sitting inside the Camry, the screen does seem to be a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit better, but overall very similar. Paddle shifters on the back of this leather-wrapped steering wheel. I don't see any buttons for heated seats or anything, and actually maybe this screen is about the same size on this SE, but overall, you have a few more options on this one. Physical HVAC still remains, but you have more plugins, a wireless charger. The backup camera is going to be better too, plus the trajectory lines actually move on the Camry, unlike the Corolla. And then you have a bunch of different drive modes. Honestly, I've 0 to 60 tested a RAV4 hybrid that I used to own, and it wasn't any faster in sport than eco. From a roll, it would be faster on acceleration, but from a standstill, it's basically doing what it can do either way. Electronic parking brake, and then a much larger center console. Not too much to talk about up here. You do have a sunglass holder on this one, but it still just has the extension piece, and then it has an LED light up top. With that said, let's hop out, and I'll give you my final thoughts. My final thoughts of the 2026 Toyota Corolla versus its big brother, the Camry. Honestly, guys, I'm not surprised why over 250,000 people buy each of these models in the United States every year. They're both fantastic vehicles. But is the Camry worth about $10,000 depending on trim level? I think it just depends on what you use the vehicles for. Are you often going to need 2 extra cubic feet of cargo capacity, slightly larger back seats, or are you going to have child safety seats back there? Do you need the extra 50 to 70 horsepower depending on spec for most configurations? There really is a lot of variation with the Corolla. Or do you just need basic transportation, in which case the Corolla might shine, especially if you don't need the all-wheel drive feature that the Camry has on demand. Overall, I think these are both fantastic vehicles. They offer a lot. You can get thousands off of Edmark, so a few $1,000s under MSRP, I don't think you can go wrong either way, especially when they are both a top safety pick, but the Camry has a longer wheelbase. It is a larger vehicle. It's more comfortable, more powerful, and it does things better. But do you need that? Do you need to spend an extra $10,000 just to drive around something that's a little bit nicer? It just depends on your budget. It depends on your preferences. But honestly, I had a lot of fun with these vehicles today. Comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out Edmark Toyota and Lasfit. And thank you so much for watching until the end. Hope to see you guys on the next one. See ya.